the second session of the ML workshop, and we have two great talks for you now on something a bit more principled than module systems. So we're first of all starting with Thomas Brevet from CryptoSense, who will be telling us about a new fuzzing API that they've been developing that is particularly well suited to the ML module system. In fact. So Thomas, over to you.
Hi. So as you can gather from the title, I'm working in a startup called CryptoSense, which is actually a Moonray spin-off. And in order to give you a bit of a context about what I will say in this talk, I will tell you what the startup does and how it's using some stuff that we did with Jonathan and Gabriel a few months ago. So the idea is that some years ago, Finance transactions were done using paper slips and phone calls, but times have changed, and now these transactions are under a hardened computer called hardware security modules, which are basically secured environments for cryptographic operations. And generally speaking, they make it possible to generate cryptographic keys and use these keys for various purposes. So for instance, when you go to an ATM to ask for money, the PIN pad contains a small HSM. And it's going to talk with your card and talk with other HSMs in the network to check that your PIN is indeed correct before giving any cash. And HSMs are tamper resistant, meaning that if you try to open the box, they will actually self-destruct. You should not be able to read the values of the key which are stored inside. And the problem is that HSMs are really expensive, and they are not made in a tailored fashion for each user. Okay? So what they expose is a set of APIs and a set of configuration options. And it's the job of the user to make sure that the HSM is in a secure configuration. Okay? And it's a hard problem. And it turns out that there are a few 21st century bank robberies which are actually exploiting failures in this kind of configuration options to rob money from the banks. And this selfie is related to a recent case in which a few hackers were able to forge and clone debit cards and withdraw a lot of money, like 45 million, in a very short amount of time from ATMs all over the world. And so the idea is that at CryptoSense, we are building tools which are finding this kind of attacks on the HSM. So we have a kind of workflow in which we are going to test an HSM from a HSM user like a bank for quite a long time. And then we are going to use the result of this testing phase to learn the behavior of the HSM. And then we are going to apply state-of-the-art checking techniques to find logical attacks on the HSMs. In this talk, I will, of course, focus on the testing part, but I'm quite happy to talk to you about the rest afterwards, if you are interested in these kind of things. So, we want to generate test cases for the various functions of the APIs that are exposed by an HSM. So we turn to the world of software application, and we ask, okay, how can I generate test cases automatically? And one well-known solution is QuickCheck. Okay, so QuickCheck is a combinator library, originally in Haskell, to generate test cases for functions based on that type. So the idea is that if you want to test, for instance, the sort function, which sorts a list of integers, you will generate a bunch of lists of integers, apply the sort function, and test some properties about it. Okay? But it doesn't work properly to test the interaction of several functions. Okay? If you have a library with several functions which can interact in a various way, you have to test each function separately. In order to be able to generate test cases for the function, it needs to know how the various types are implemented. Okay? It needs to know how to generate lists, okay? Or trees, or whatever. There was a recent blog post by Matthew Knight a few weeks ago, in which he spent quite a long time explaining how to generate red flag trees, because he wanted to explain what QuickCheck does. Okay? And generating red flag trees is actually a hard problem. So here, we are going to solve these three issues just by using the fact that we are living in a language with a module system, okay, and we can use the API. And it happens that the same idea happens to HSM, which are also a kind of module, hardware security module, with an API. But it's really coincidental. So, what we did with Jonathan and Gabriel a few months ago was to write a prototype library to generate test cases for safety properties of data structure libraries. Okay? And the idea is that it works at the API level. It's not going to generate test cases function per function. It's going to generate a set of possible values that you are going to test afterwards. And it's going to generate these values not by generating random generators, but by combining the function calls that are possible in your API in a principled manner. And it's not going to use the type definitions. Okay? It can work properly with abstract types. It's just going to use what you give to it in the interface of the module. Okay? So the idea here is that types help you generate good random values. Okay? But APIs, the fact that you are not allowed to do some stuff, like looking inside the definition of an abstract value, help you generate actually values which have the right internal invariance. Okay? If you have a data structure which exposes a set of functions, this data structure is likely to implement internally some invariance. Okay? And you don't have to write generators which are going to produce value with the same invariance. You can just use the function in your API to generate a good test cases. And I have to make one thing clear, which is that well-typed doesn't mean well-formed. Okay? You can just as easily produce fuzzing examples, like giving an empty list to a function which is not supposed to accept an empty list in this kind of case. But we are just going to test well-typed test cases. Okay. So the outline of the talk is the following. I'm going to describe the idea of what we did. And we did it twice. Once with Jonathan and Gabriel, and once at Cryptosense. And I'm not going to explain to you the tiny details and the tiny differences between the two implementations. What I want to make you understand is the general idea. But I will bring an industrial perspective, which is that we are testing crypto APIs, and we are facing some particular problems. And I want to give you this kind of perspective. Okay. So how do we describe API? So first, what's an API? So an API is basically a set of types which may or may not be abstract, which may or may not be polymorphic, and a set of functions. So for instance, on the left-hand side of the interface of set data structure. And I don't care how this set data structure is implemented. It can be implemented using lists, using red flag trees. I don't care. Okay? I'm going to test it in the same manner. On the right-hand side, I have a mock crypto API. So we have templates, which is like the set of attributes that describe what a key can do. The type for keys, and the type for text, and a few functions. Okay? And there is a slight restriction in this slide, which is that I'm only considering first-order functions. Okay? I believe that higher-order functions are a kind of orthogonal problems that can be solved in another context. But in this talk, I'm restricting myself to first-order functions. So, how do we test an implementation of red flag trees? Okay, that's the example that Matthew might use, so I could as well use it. So, we are going to just look at the API. So I don't care about what is on the right-hand side. It's just the values that I'm going to generate. But in order to generate them, I'm only going to use the left-hand side, which is the interface. So I start with the only way to build a set, which is the empty set. And then I pick an integer at random, okay, and I insert it to this empty set. And then, okay, I can insert a new element or delete an element, and so on and so forth. So after a while, I have a bunch of inhabitants of the type int t, because I choose to instantiate alpha with int. And the way to produce a new element is to pick a function, so insert, pick an element of the set of the sets, and add a value to this set. Okay, so if I just insert 4 into the third one, it gives the fourth one. Okay, so that's how it works. And in order to do that, we need just 3 things. Very simple things. The first one is a way to describe at runtime the inhabitants of a type. So the alpha ty definition is just a way to represent inhabitants of the type alpha. Okay. So it's just basically a set and I don't really care if this set is implemented, and the name of this type. The second thing that I need is a way to describe a function. And in order to do that, I can just use a very simple GADT. And you may be familiar with this kind of GADT if you have ever used types in the kernel or this kind of thing. So it's basically a GADT that is used to represent the type of a function or the type of a constant. And the third element that I need is a way to describe a signature. So a signature is just a list, of function declaration. So a function declaration is just a label, the string, a type description, the fn part, and the actual inhabitant of this function description, type description. Okay? So what is important here is that we are using GADTs to represent it inside the language. Then, if we come back to the example of red type trees, the actual declaration that we need to do is very limited. Okay? We just need to declare how we are going to store integers, how we are going to store sets, and write one function declaration per function of the API. Okay? And then we have a bunch of ways to combine these functions. Okay? At this point, I must confess that I don't really know which is the best, because I believe that there is no best solution. It depends on what you do. Sometimes you want to do breadth first exploration. Sometimes you want to do random walks in order to first beat your API, and this kind of things. But at the end of this process, what you get is a list of inhabitants for each type. And then you can use these inhabitants to check properties like invariant. All the trees that I'm going to build are proper red-black trees. They are ordered, and they have the black 8 invariant, and these kind of things. Or to check correctness properties. So I can check that for all trees that I have built, so that's a finite quantification of the stuff that I have built, I am able to prove that deleting an element that I've just inserted is the same thing as having done nothing. Okay? So, of course, the actual DSS for types that we are using is a bit more involved, because we want to be able to express the fact that a function is returning a pair, and if the function returns a pair, the user or the attacker can decompose this pair and use the two elements separately. Okay? So with a richer domain-specific language for description of types, we are able to express this property. So what's the field report of what we do at Cryptosense? We have some issues which were not apparent when we were dealing with data structure closing implementation. So we have to enumerate big combinatorial spaces. Like we have, for instance, stuff that we know in advance, which are like templates, mechanisms, key types. Okay, but these things can be really, really big, and we want to enumerate them. Okay, because we are quite happy to test an HSM for a very long time, and it must fit in the memory. And we have types which are going to be populated dynamically. We are generating keys, so we have more and more keys. We also want to generate those test cases in a principled manner, meaning that if we are looking at templates, we want to look at all the templates with one attribute, all the templates with two attributes, and so on and so forth. And what we want is something which is reproducible. We know that it might be the case that the API we are testing will not be exactly deterministic, but we want to be able to reproduce the same, the general kind of things that we did. So this is the same API as I showed before. We have templates, we know them in advance, and we are going to use them to generate keys. And once we have keys, we can wrap the keys together to generate text, or encrypt text with another key. Okay? The big question is how to do that in an efficient manner. So the first thing that we need is a library of finite enumerators. We want to have a small memory footprint. Okay? So we cannot use, for instance, arrays or lists because they are just too expensive. We also want efficient access. We may want to access stuff in a pseudo-random order, okay, which will be deterministic, but which may appear pseudo-random. So list is not doesn't cut it.
So what exactly are you accessing?
Like, if I want the 1 millionth template, okay, and I know how I'm generating templates. Okay. That's it, and for the 1 billionth. So, in the end, what we came up with is this kind of library. So we just implemented enumerators as functions from integers to stuff. And we have a few combinators to generate enumerators. And there is one which I really, really like, so, which is the subset one. So the idea is that you want to enumerate the alpha, a list of alphas. Okay? And you want to enumerate this list by producing all the lists with 0 element, then all the lists with 1 element, then all the lists with 2 elements, and so on and so forth. And it's very useful to test templates in the right order, which is very important in what we do. And it boils down to some thing called the gospel hack, which enumerates integers based on the number of bits which are set to 1. And it's really like magic. Okay. And then we are composing this stuff, and we end up with enumerators which are quite efficient. But we need another thing, which is the ability to know what are the dynamic part of the state that we have not yet enumerated. And in order to do that, we have another DSL, which makes it possible to describe combinatorial problems. Okay? And we built the description of the combinatorial problem, which boils down to two kinds of leaves. We have constant leaves, okay, the stuff that we are going to know in advance, and the stuff that is going to be populated dynamically, generating a new key and this kind of stuff. And we build this thing statically, and then we update the state of the combinatorial exploration dynamically. And we are able to compute quite efficiently what needs to be done next. Okay? Because if you are building big products, Cartesian products of stuff, you don't want to store them explicitly. Okay? You want to be a bit symbolic, and we can do that. And the way this works is quite fun, because it boils down to a kind of derivative computing. Okay, so we want to compute what's the effect of adding a new element to a type. And if you write the equations for this language, it really, really looks like what you did in high school to compute derivatives of multivariate polynomial this kind of things. So you are building sets of new tests to consider. And in the end, what does it produce as a result? So we are testing here an API called PicaCS11, which is a kind of standard. Okay. I've configured the tool to look at a set of templates. So the first column is the set number of tests that have been done for each function, the number of successes, the number of errors, and the time that was spent in the actual calls to the API. And the number of tests that remain to be done, and it's quite huge. I don't know how many numbers the last number has, but it probably wouldn't fit in memory if I was going to represent it explicitly. But the tool is able to do that, to do 1 million of tests in a short amount of time. And the actual overhead of the computation of this enumerations and this combinatorial space exploration is quite small, so we are quite happy. And doing this test is really interesting because we are just testing, and it's the first phase of our analysis. Later we are going to do symbolic machine learning and model checking to find attacks. But with this kind of things, we already find bugs. Okay. So that's a testament to what we do. So the takeaway lesson from this talk is that we really have a principled way to test APIs, which builds on the fact that we are considering two examples in which we are using modules which have abstract interfaces. And this seems to be new. So we have applied this technique with Jonathan Gabriel and data structures. And it's quite interesting to test a BDD library with this kind of thing. Because if you think about BDDs, I did that as an example. If you do think about BDDs, writing a generator to test BDD algorithm is quite complicated because what are you going to? I mean, it's really imperative inside, but what the API looks like is like a persistent API. Okay, so that's something that should be hard to do in and we have applied the same techniques at CryptoSense. So I have one last thing to tell you about before I conclude, which is we find bugs in real HSMs, and we also find logical attacks, like the kind of the selfie. And we are recruiting, so if you are interested, please come and talk to me at the end. So thank you.
Thank you for a great talk. Now, if the speakers could either use the mic or I'll come over and answer this one. I'll come over. Thanks.
You had that slide earlier with the thing about high school algebra.
Yes.
I didn't get a chance to look at it carefully. Is that the same as there was I think unpublished paper by Connor McBride about the type of derivative of the derivative of a type is the type that's one whole context. Is that the same as that? Or?
No.
Okay.
Because I think that the derivative of the type that it produces is a type. Okay? While here we are computing a new set of values that need to be tested. And that's a very interesting remark because there are plenty of people who are playing or dealing with derivatives of types. And I know Jan Regis Janus, again, and it's not the same notion. So maybe there is something to do with a general framework of derivatives of types, and I don't know, but that's a very interesting topic.
So this is great work, and your numbers show that you can very quickly generate a lot of data.
Yes.
How long does it take to actually run this data on a real age?
So that was a real example.
So it wasn't just the generation phase?
It's testing. I mean, no, you cannot generate the test cases and then run them because it's dynamic. Okay? So you generate a test case and you don't know in advance if the HSM is going to return you a new key or not. Okay? It may just refuse all the time, or it may sometimes accept. Okay? So you don't know in advance what the test pattern is going to be. So here we are really exploring the state space dynamically. So we cannot generate the test cases and then run them. Here we are doing that.
Okay, but you could still count separately the time you spend generating versus the time you count
but
running.
that's the 20%. So that's the 20%. So the total running time is 540 seconds. And the sum of the time that was spent in the calls to the API is, I think, 500 seconds.
Okay.
So, with your red black tree example, maybe this is very simple and I just didn't understand something, but there are lots of sequences of calls to the API that don't necessarily generate interesting or distinct red black trees, right?
Yes.
Like create an empty one and delete a whole bunch of things. So how do you map sort of coverage of the API to coverage of the actual
That's
underlying state?
So basically, it boils down to the set implementation that you are looking. So for instance, if you are looking at a proper set, you can say, okay, all the trees with, for instance, the same height are equal. Okay, and then you are just going to try to produce trees which are bigger and bigger in order to populate your set dynamically. Or you can say, okay, I'm quite happy to consider distinct all the red-black trees which are physically distinct. Okay, and then you will have another bunch of test cases.
Okay.
So,
but it might take. Do you have to build in some knowledge that sort of says like?
Yeah, sure. So that's the string that. Sorry. Here. So the actual. I mean, in QuickCheck you have to build some knowledge about how you write random generators. Here we are building some knowledge about what's the correct way to represent and store data. And it's quite distinct.
In QuickCheck, once you found a counter example, you want to do example reduction.
Yes.
Do you have the same need here, and can you still do it?
But at the end, if we find a counterexample, sorry, if we find a counterexample to this test, it will be a test. And you can try to come up with functions to reduce this test, but you have to write them by hand.
Yeah, but the test, the example you get may be very large because you built
Yes.
it from. So is there a way that you could reduce this, the construction of this counterexample to a smaller one that will also invalidate that? This is what they do in QuickCheck in the second part. Once in form one, they try to generate another one that exhibits the same misbehavior, but it's much shorter so that you can understand what's going on.
And there is also maybe a talk today in the Pascal Symposium by Lee Pike on smart check, in which he tries to come up with symbolic formulas that represent a set of counterexamples. So I think we could do the same, but not in an automatic fashion. We would have to have a function from type alpha t to, from type alpha to alpha list, which is trying to come up with smaller examples of the same variation. And then we could use this knowledge to try to explore all the smaller examples to find a smaller counterexample. But
I think we'll have to take further questions offline. Although I had one quick question. Is the would the library be open source and available for the community to try?
So it's actually on GitHub.
It's on GitHub, great.
Yeah.
So if it's on the open repository, then
No, it's not properly a library. So it's a prototype of a library, and we are still working on it. Okay, but one day it will be a library. But if you want to have a look at the source code, it's already on my GitHub page.
Wonderful. Let's thank Thomas for a great talk.